what ADHD often robs us of is that self-trust, that self-belief that we can actually do the stuff that we say we want to do.
Hey squirrels, welcome to ADHD, where ADHD isn't some clinical diagnosis, it's just life. I'm AV, your always honest tour guide through this beautiful mess. Over here, we're not about fixing yourself. We're about figuring out how to actually enjoy your life as you are. So grab a snack and let's go. There's a version of ADHD entrepreneurship that looks like success from the outside and feels like barely controlled chaos from the inside. You're moving and you're building and you're hitting milestones, and privately, you have no idea how you're doing any of it or how long you can keep doing it before something breaks. So you're white knuckling your way through life and compensating for the drop balls and rebuilding the same system for the fifth time because you tell yourself that this time it's really going to stick. And the whole time, somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this question that you don't say out loud. What if I can't actually do this? Today's guest answered that question the hard way. He built a multi-million-dollar software company, took it all the way to exit, and did the whole thing before he even knew he had ADHD. And now he helps other founders do it on purpose. Hey squirrels, welcome back to ADHD. Let's get into it. I am joined today by Steve August. Steve is an ADHD business coach, the founder of the ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator, and the author of the Essential ADHD Plan. He built a qualitative research software company called Revelation, took it to a multi-million-dollar exit, and went on to serve as chief innovation officer at the acquiring company. And he did all of that before he knew that he had ADHD. He now runs programs specifically designed for neurodivergent founders that are built around how the ADHD brain actually works, not how the business world thinks that it should work. Gamification, dopamine, conscious design, and delegation structures that go beyond the tasks. And a very specific take on what consistency actually means for somebody whose brain is wired the way ours is. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's great to be here, Abby.
So talk to me about that journey of building a multi-million-dollar company, the exit, and then being the CIO at the acquiring company, pre-diagnosis.
Well, it's so interesting because it felt like one story as I was doing it. And then when I got diagnosed later in life at 54, I realized it was an entirely different story. So my startup happened almost accidentally in that it grew out of my wife's business, actually. So this was when we started on her business in 2002. She was a market research consultant. I was working a bunch of other creative jobs that were really fun but didn't pay a lot. And so I became the tech and marketing guy for her consulting company. And what she did was study consumers, study people in their homes. And so she would go to the people's homes and, observe what they were doing, making coffee or their digital photos or whatever it was. And then she would send these paper diaries ahead of time so she could figure out what was really going on, while she wasn't there. And it was right around the time blogs were emerging. And I was like, well, we've got these web diaries. Maybe they'll be easier than the paper diaries. So we did that and tried it out, and it worked really well. And we started speaking about it at conferences. And then people started coming up to us and saying, hey, that looks really cool. We would love to use that. Can we use that? And I would say, yeah, could, but you probably wouldn't want to because you had to be pretty technical at the time, technology. But I thought, I bet we could build something that you could use. And that's how it started rolling. And we created this company and software called Revelation, where it basically helped people understand experiences as they were happening. And it started off with, we took a small business loan, then we got friends and family. Then when we moved up to Portland, we won an angel competition and then got a little seed round. And then through fits and starts, grew that through to exit to the point where a strategic in our industry wanted us. And it was fascinating because I just thought I was learning as any kind of first-time founder is, and all this stuff that I was experiencing was just due to a learning curve. I was smart, but there was things about the business I was really good at, like the visioning and the evangelizing and all the stuff that had that kind of rich dopamine kind of part, right? That that vein of dopamine that was continually being mined. And as we grew and we got to 20, 30 people, then it was like, became more operational at that time. And that's where I was like really struggling. And I didn't realize why I was struggling other than I was just a bad operator. And it was really fascinating, as that started to even go to the next level when I became a C-level person in a more like $100 million company and was the chief innovation officer for a while and then the chief marketing officer for a while. And the kind of like operational and the structure required for that just did not work for me at all. And so that's where I, bounced out and, I was already burned out by that point because it was to the ADHD experience part of things. I was working about 4x harder than maybe somebody who didn't have that kind of particular spiciness in ADHD because it just took me so much longer to focus in it, to get into focus and get into hyperfocus and then make it happen. And decisions were exquisitely hard because, ADHD brain's always generating options and trying to make movies about how to control stuff. And then even with how I dealt with clients, on one part, it was a superpower. It was like, because I was very empathetic or empathic to clients. On the other side, it was like, I was super like rejection sensitivity. So if a client had a problem with the software, then I felt like they were having a problem with it. And it was like, so it was this huge emotional roller coaster the whole time. And startup life is, if you're neurotypical or if you're neurodiverse, but the particular angles or the particular parts of the experience that I didn't appreciate because I had no idea I was ADHD at the time made the energetic costs so much higher. And that's what I sort of take away is like that thing that you mentioned, like on the outside being successful, on the inside just feeling like you're barely holding it together. It just makes so much sense if you're navigating these situations and you don't actually know how your brain works and why it's doing the things it's doing and why you're feeling the things that you're feeling. And that's been, something that just came to a head even after I left the company that acquired us and went out and was coaching startup founders. I remember being at my peak in 2023. I was facilitating this amazing retreat for a London VC in Portugal. Like it couldn't be more like, beautiful kind of like peak moment in a coaching career. And I felt like while everything turned out, I felt like I was just getting things in just in the nick of time and pulling it off. And I just realized at that point, and I got the ADHD diagnosis and it explained so much about not that why I couldn't, I was clearly successful, but why it costs so much to do it the way I did it without knowing and having the support up about my ADHD brain.
As you're talking, something is so clear to me because you said that not only is there extra cost, but if we pull that thread a little bit more, the extra cost is, you said there's the time spent coming into focus and really getting to peak focus and being able to get the things done. And then there's the time that we tack on the back end to compensate for the time that we were wasting to get into focus, right? So you're supposed to have an 8-hour workday, but I really only worked 4 hours. So I should probably do another 4 hours at home or 4 hours later on today. So it's not just that we're taking up all of our time and that it's costing extra of resources outside of time to switch in and out and transition in and out of focus and to get tasks done. Then we also are adding additional tasks on our plate and the piece of rejection sensitivity that if you are expecting yourself to be performing at peak all the time and something goes wrong, which it inevitably will, all of those things compound to this insurmountable mountain.
Yeah. So, and what I've seen with the people I've been working with over the last couple of years as I've been developing my systems in the ADHD Accelerator and the Focus Formula program is that what happens is with an ADHD brain, we often don't have any buffer, right? So we're always kind of last minuting it or just kind of like getting it in at the last second. And if something else comes in unexpected, then there's no buffer, right? And so it's like, then the whole house of cards starts to fall over. And what I've seen over time is that creating that ability to navigate that dopamine desert between, intense interest and urgent consequence, that middle zone where it's really hard for an ADHD brain to get into action. If we make progress in that area, in that dopamine desert, then all of a sudden not only do we get work done and progress made, but we get a buffer for that stuff. So yeah, life's always going to throw stuff at us. Business is always going to throw stuff at us, but having that buffer it's a game changer in how you experience business and life.
You said something in our first conversation that I want to pull apart a little bit, that successful delegation for ADHD entrepreneurs doesn't mean delegating tasks.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is something that has taken me a long time to learn. And when I was running my startup and even working when I was coach, doing just solely one-on-one coaching and trying to have help and VAs, it was really challenging to delegate, because that's what everybody says. You got to delegate. You got to, create the circumstances, delegate, or else you'll just be the bottleneck, right? And it's really hard for an ADHD brain to do that because of a few things. One, executive function is about organizing and putting things into order and sequence, and our brains are really challenged to do that. And two, we just do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of very organic. And you're asking us, an ADHD brain, to kind of go inside itself and sort of like, okay, document how you made that happen or how you do that. It's, I don't know. I just kind of do it. Pull it out of the ether. It works. I can't explain it.
I thought about it
else to do it.
and then I did it and it worked out.
Yeah. So what I came to is like having real, and as I learned about ADHD being more about executive function than attention. Like it's a really wrongly named disorder, right? Because it's not really about attention. We have plenty of attention, certainly not a deficit of attention, plenty of attention, too much attention, a surplus of attention. It's about being able to put that attention and that focus where we want it, when we want to put it there. That's the challenge. And that's an executive function. And that's the role executive function plays for us in helping us make our way through life and business. And so if we're down a court on executive function and you're asking an ADHD brain to be not only executive function for themselves, already a challenge, but also be executive function for somebody else. So not only do I have to figure out what I got to do or what I should do, I got to figure that out for somebody else. And it's like, that's already a double hit. So I hit upon this thing where it's just like, oh, if I'm looking at it from an executive function, of course, the virtual assistants and the VAs I've had over the time didn't work out because they needed that direction. They weren't supplying that. So if somebody's going to actually work out from a delegation point of view, I have to actually delegate the executive function parts of things. Like, I don't need to onboard them. They need to figure out how to onboard me and get us working and get us going, because my executive function isn't going to be great at doing that. And I want the person that can help me get there. Right. And so that's been my kind of angle on it, is like, it's not about the tasks themselves. It's about the executive function to actually figure out the tasks and put them in a sequence and help get them done. That's what delegation really is.
And where does that come into play with the dopamine desert?
Well, it comes into play with the dopamine desert so in order to get to where we want to go. So let me zoom back out for a second. So everybody talks a lot about productivity, right? We've got to be productive. And it's okay. As anybody who's been neurospicy knows, you can be really productive and not make a wick of progress, right? Towards where you actually want to go. So that's why I always think about progress. How am I going to make progress towards the place I want to go? And so what I teach in Focus Formula is we have certain areas that we struggle in deciding, doing, and sustaining. And so in order to get to where we want to go, we have to figure out what's important. And that's something that we really have to do, because nobody can decide that for us. But then we have to break down what I call the journey between your magnetic north, how you want your business to be and your life to be and the impact you want to make, and where you are now. That's a journey, right? We're here where we are now. We've got this magnetic north off in the future, in the distance, and we've got to organize that trip, right? And that means breaking it down into steps and putting those steps into a sequence and then executing on those steps. And that's where the executive function really helps, right? Because that's where ADHD brains start to sort of like wander around the dopamine desert, because if your prioritization is governed by a brain that prioritizes what's interesting and what's urgent, then you're going to go between shiny objects and side quests and rabbit holes. If we can work proactively, then we're going to make progress. And so that's what the executive function is really there to do, is to really say, okay, I'm interested in that, but does that actually get me where I want to go? Or I have set my priority and now I need to break that down into steps. And that's where executive assistant or somebody helping with executive function can really help. And then also offloading some of the stuff that's really cognitively expensive for us. Like for me, scheduling is really cognitively expensive because a calendar is like 365 times 24 options.
Yep.
It's just like, I don't know.
And I can do a lot of stuff in 5 minutes in my mind. So
yeah, that take 2 hours in reality. Right. And so those are the two areas. So it's like making sure you're pointing at the most important stuff and making sure the other things that aren't as important, that are going to burn your executive function, you don't burn your executive function.
If you're picturing it like a video game, nobody said that you have to play a video game by advancing from one level to the next. If you were playing a video game and your objective was to count how many potted plants there are in the video game universe, you would wander around all of the rooms and count all the potted plants, and you would be achieving your own goal according to your own metric. But a video game is designed to draw our attention where we need to go to get us to the next place. The world isn't set up like that. So if I want to advance to the next level, then I need the shiny stars to be along the path that's going to get me there so that I don't end up counting potted plant. Can you tell I don't play video games?
Yeah, a little bit. I haven't played the potted plant video game yet.
Maybe it's like a Minecraft thing. I'm building things in my head. It seems.
Yeah. So an open world type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ADHD brains world versus level gaming.
Yeah, a platforming style of thing, right? And both are important, right? Because like world creation is an ADHD specialty. We love creating. You know, it's a never-ending source of inspiration, ideas, options. So it's interesting you brought this analogy up, because that's exactly what we've just created with the ADHD Entrepreneur Accelerator, was to actually say, look, ADHD brains need the game. They need fun and interest and things to keep it interesting through the dopamine desert, through like the showing up every day. Basically, everybody who's in the accelerator earns points as they like do things like co-working. Like each day we have 8 hours of hosting co-working every day now. And if you show up for a day, you get a point, right? And the cool thing is you can cash in those points for prizes on our prize wall.
That's so fun.
Like it's like, because you think about it, is like all the tools that are out there. You've got, productivity apps, and you've got hacks that out there, and you've got systems, and you've got co-working, rooms and things like that. But what I find is we've got to use all the tools. You got to have all the layers. So, and creating some serious fun that actually goes beyond, like, it's just so funny seeing people saying, oh, I just feel so much better. I know it shouldn't mean this much, but whenever I get a point each day, I feel really good.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we inject dopamine in the journey to basically just say, acknowledge this is how our brain works. This is what it needs. And if we have these things, we're going to take that brilliance that is awesome, and we're going to now like focus it and bring it and level up each month. So I don't know. I'm super excited about it, and it's a lot of fun. So
that's a lot of fun
on my mind.
That's a lot of fun. I love when people tell me, you can just write it down, and then when you check it off, you just feel so good. And I'm like, I don't think that, because a check mark just isn't going to do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the idea of having all of the tools and all of the skills under one roof, in one place, is really, really critical. And I personally got a lot of flack for being too diversified and who I was trying to attract and what services we provide, and we're doing too much stuff and I need to just pick one thing. But one of the driving forces behind my neurodivergent informed business is that I really think everything needs to be under one roof.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise I get
Yeah.
confused. I don't remember where I even put the things that I set up to help myself.
Yeah. And what I see is there's three problems that I see that we hit, and we all have to sort of figure out our solutions for it. But ADHD brains, entrepreneurs are always fighting the scattered week,
Okay.
right? You start off with great intentions, and by the end of the week, you're surveying the wreckage because somehow things have drifted. The dopamine desert, which we talked about, and then the inevitable drift. Like, even if you have a great system or a great way of doing things, like, it gets boring after a while. It gets routine, and then all of a sudden your brain's like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. But the thing is if we are able to work with those, then we get into this magic compounding of results, right? Because compounding is not just for our bank accounts, it's for life and business. Like, when we put something out there, get a result, learn from the result, repeat, do again, like, stuff grows. And it might start a little bit at a time, but if you look at every podcast that took off, every YouTube channel that took off, every business that took off, generally it's like this flat curve for a while, and then because they stuck at it over time, there's this leap. And ADHD brains often like abandon ship before that can happen, and so, or drift away, or restart, and so you don't get that kind of compounding effect. And so that to me is the game, and just figuring out which ways we can help ADHD brains like get the benefits of their brilliance and turn it into what they really dream of it being.
And I love that you're phrasing it that way, because when we think about interest, or when we think about compounding, like finances, I think immediately of the stock market. If you bail because your stock dropped, you're a dummy, right? I'm pretty sure that that's what people who have money invested say. Like, invest low and hold on to it for as long as you can and do the thing and see it through. The stock market, by definition, is going to rise and fall. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to lose a lot of money. Things are going to go well. Things are not going to go well. But we don't look at the stock market and say that because it isn't improving incrementally on a daily basis, that therefore it is invalid. Actually, a stock market that's simply improved according to a set like prime and just improved at that rate all the time doesn't bolster the economy in any way. It's completely predictable. You can build around it, and it doesn't actually benefit anyone in the same way that a stock market that rises and falls does.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways that people approach the stock market, if we're leaning into that analogy. So the one that there is the dream of, like, you put money in a stock and it shoots through the roof, and life is good. But the time tested version of that is the dollar cost averaging approach. It's like steady, consistent investment over time, knowing that the stock market is going to go up and down. And then but if you keep investing at a steady rate the whole time, you're going to, buy during the dips, and you're going to, improve your price. And over time, it grows, right? Because the world is growing. More people are there, more more things are happening. And that's just been the history of it. And I think that is like a challenging proposition for an ADHD brain, to be like steady state and consistent over time, right? Because it's not interesting.
No.
But so we have to wrap stuff around it to make it interesting. And that's been my sort of premise. But what you see then is, I just see people just changing their lives. I have one person who was ready to shut down her business. She just, my brain can't handle it. It's too hard. I think I'm done. And then she took one of my courses, and it's joined the accelerator, and now her business is doing really well. And more importantly, she's been able to step into other parts of her life. She always wanted to turn a garage into an art studio, and now she has. And this is in less than a year that she's been, there doing this stuff. So when the right level of structure, and the right incentives, and the right kind of like sense of fun, and the right sense of community, when these elements are there, it's amazing what I see happen.
Do you have to work for yourself to get to that standard?
To which standard? I want to make sure I understand the question.
It's fluctuating. So that standard of freedom that you just described, where people are really stepping into their lives and they've scaffolded their lives in a way that supports their needs. Do they have to work for themselves to make that work?
No, they don't have to work for themselves. I have, at least a few people who have come through the program as employees, as team members. And what happened for them is they got to get their work done without having to last minute or show up or ask for an extension and things like that. I had one person, we have quite a number of academics actually in our program. And one person's he said he's been late on the same annual report that he's required to do for 16 years. He's been doing, and this year he finally got it in a few days ahead of time.
That's so cool.
Just like, it's wild. And it's just like, and now other parts of his life are opening up. So yes, it doesn't have to be, I focus on entrepreneurship because that's my history. And that's where I confuse my knowledge of the entrepreneurial journey and my lived experience and what I've learned about ADHD and smush those together. But this stuff can work for anybody in a situation, in that finding a way, like understanding your brain, understanding how it really works, understanding how to prioritize what you're really there to do, keeping that front and center. Because that's one of the things we do is we have people actually print out their magnetic north. There's a template, a little Canva template that is like a triangle. To show it to you, like, and
Very
it's
cool.
like, I just have it on my desk because having it front and center keeps it in focus. Executive function means a little less working memory. So that means things that are out of sight quickly go out of mind. And suddenly we're just like untethered and unmoored to where we actually want to go. And so we have to just keep reminding ourselves of that. And that's what I do. I have a weekly dashboard that I offer for free in a program called X-Tiles. And that's part of it, is like that magnetic north is always there. But that's like, whatever your situation is, if you can, understand where you're going and what your priorities are, turn your weeks from scattered to reasonably focused, which means you know what's important, you make some progress on what's important, and you meet your brain where it's at, and you're able to sustain that over some length of time, then your life is going to change.
Your approach is like action focused.
Absolutely.
As opposed to CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, or like cognitive distortions, or how adapting specific cognitive distortions will affect your behavior. What you're saying is, when you do the things, the noise has an opportunity to be reduced and different areas of your life can open up, at which point, who even knows, because you have more bandwidth and capacity than you did before.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's why co-working is part of all my programs. Some people call it body doubling, but because that's where I've seen the transformation start, is somebody sits down and they're like, so how are co-working sessions? And you show up on Zoom. You say what you're going to do. A host asks you what you're going to do, and you say it, or you put it in the chat. We set a timer for 25 minutes, and then we check in at the bottom of the hour and do it again, check in at the top of the hour. And what I see is people are like, holy crap, I just got the thing I said I was going to get done. And so what ADHD often robs us of is that self-trust, that self-belief that we can actually do the stuff that we say we want to do, because we show up to do it and we're like, oh, I so want to do this. And our brain's, nah, I don't want to do it. I'm going to go watch YouTube because that's easy.
Yeah.
Right. When they actually start doing that and making progress, that I feel like is worth 1 million CBTs.
Yeah.
Therapy sessions, because it's like demonstrated evidence that, oh, you can do it. And part of what's happening in those co-working sessions, one, it's an accountability thing. But the thing that we really discovered in the last year was it's also a co-regulation. So what happens with executive function is, one of the things that's harder with executive function deficits is emotional regulation, right? And so the cruel trick is, if you get dysregulated because you get overwhelmed by something, you actually lose access to your executive function, which makes it harder to organize and start doing stuff, which then starts this kind of loop, right? And the CBT, it works for people. DBT works for people. But what I find is, if you can just get something done, then the loop stops because you've gotten something done. And if you start repeating that over time, And if you're like, oh, and I get to earn a point and I get to earn a prize, like a t-shirt or a mug or something, then all of a sudden that self-trust starts to creep back in. And that to me is just, it's just been phenomenal, amazing to see the transformation it makes on people. And so what the CBT and DBT and all that stuff is doing is partially is the emotional regulation, but the co-working is also a co-regulating thing, because when you're in an environment in a Zoom room and everybody in that room understands your brain, and you don't have to have the mask up or pretend, and you can just be like, yeah, I mentioned this the other day. It's like, yeah, last night instead of doing the nightly ritual that I said I was going to do, and I was going to shut off my computer, is like, I got on a Reddit thread about what celebrities are nice and which ones aren't nice. And
I know so much about.
yeah. And I was like, that is 30 minutes of my life I will never get back, and we're not productive, and did not advance me at all.
Mhm.
And it was just clearly my brain hunting for dopamine and getting in a loop. But the fact that I would say that, and everybody else has moments where like, yeah, that wasn't the best work sprint I've ever had, or my brain's really all over the place today. And everybody gets, oh yeah, totally been there. Right. That being in a group of people, in a virtual room with that, where you're just like, oh, cool. You mean I can just be me? Whatever that is. It's like, it brings down the emotional kind of like dysregulation, and that actually helps people get more stuff done. So it's a really fascinating when we're working at all these different levels.
When I talk a lot about how motivation is a scam, this is what I mean by that. Motivation pulls on the logic that I need to feel like doing the thing before I do the thing. And that is a concept created by ad agencies to sell you stuff that's going to make you feel ready to do things. Because if you are tired in the morning and your kid was crying or screaming all night long, or you have sniffles, or you have whatever, you don't want to get out of bed. And there's no amount of motivation or whatever, but maybe there's a beauty routine or an energy drink or something that's going to give you this elusive boost that will suddenly get you to want to do all of the things. And now you'll be productive, and now you'll be wonderful, and now you'll be amazing. There's just doing the thing or not doing the thing. And when you're talking about developing this deep distrust, I think that for us ADHD folk, RSD certainly compounds that in a lot of ways. Because, yeah, I don't trust myself, and also I'm right. And also other people don't trust me, and also they're right. So it's just proof and proof and proof. How am I supposed to break down that mountain of proof? And you're saying by doing things on the other side.
Yeah, it is showing up. And what we say is like, everything counts. Showing up counts. Slow progress counts. Messy progress counts. And that one of the biggest skills that we need is bringing ourselves back, right? Because focus is always going to drift. We're never going to be perfect in focus. And some days our brains are going to be like, yeah, let's do it. We're crushing it. And other days our brains are like, nah, we got nothing for you today. I got nothing. It's okay. Find one thing. And if we just change the terms a little bit, because I think the neurotypical kind of expectation of progress / productivity is like, you nail your 5 a.m., cold plunge and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just nail the day. But for ADHD brains, it's first, let's check in. What has our brain got for us today? So what should we expect from it? And that's why that buffer is really important as well, is like that consistency and developing that a bit of progress, and that feeling of progress is so key, because some days are going to be awesome. Some days, not as much. And it's about the showing up and just getting the progress you can out of the day.
That's the beauty as well of community. Because when you were saying just showing up counts, I thought about 40 different fitness influencers who give the same advice, but they don't show up to the gym as a fat person. They show up to the gym as a fit dude with muscles coming out of his ears. So like, just walk into the gym is cute advice when you're giving it to me. So too, like, just show up for yourself. I'm trying, but the community element of showing up to a place where everyone is working. It's like a fat person gym. That would be so fun. Fat people of the world, don't you think we should start our own gym?
Yeah. It is a like brain gym. Yeah. It's people with similar brains that, and some people use the co-working time, and they'll say, I just got to tidy my desk, or I just got to clean or I'm just going to make myself, sometimes it's a self-care, and it's like, everybody's like, cool, do that. Right. And between that kind of support and then it is funny. People are like, I didn't want to break my streak. I want to get the point today. And the thing is, we say you get the point whether you show up you did all 8 hours. Like, nobody does all 8 hours, right? And that's not the expectation.
Right.
Or you showed up for the last 10 minutes of the last session, or any 10 minutes anywhere. It still counts as a day that you showed up. And that way, it just keeps people coming back. And when they come in and say, well, I'll try this. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, I got a little bit done. Right. And it's just like,
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
Does it work better when you're showing up for yourself? Because the little Duolingo owl, I let him die a few times. Or, there's the raccoon app now, maybe Fetch, that gamifies eating and calorie control.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been a big streak person. Like, I don't care about streaks, because I know I'm never going to be perfect on that front. And also, when you break a streak, it's like, oh, well, what's the point? I was at 100 and now I'm starting at 1. That sucks. So to me, it's like giving it just enough of like, it's like showing up for your business and getting the reward of showing up for, and getting an extra credit for it. And actually getting it sounds like a cash register point, and you just earn something, ka-ching. And then looking at the prize wall, and we're going to expand the prize walls, because I think we should have all the kind of classic skee ball prizes.
That's awesome.
But, and just giving people different experiences over time. And then, sometimes we'll drop in this week happens to be a double point co-working week. So instead of earning 1 point, you earn 2. So it's like keeping the novelty. Like, we really understand the brains we're working with here. And so we know that in any program over time, there's going to be that drift. There's going to be that, oh, this isn't novel anymore. And the goal is like to keep people coming back in a way that guides them in the right place, right way.
And to be very frank, when you show up and you are focused in your activity and you spend time doing that, by definition, it's going to compound. So even if you show up for 2 focused days a week, or 30 focused minutes a week that you didn't have last week, you're going to see the rewards in your business. It becomes easier to show up. Maybe the dollars come in a little bit easier. It just maybe feels a little bit easier if you're struggling with some of the external limitations, starting your business or working through your business.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to your gym analogy, the guy with the abs didn't start out with abs. But like, he's really, whenever I see somebody who's in really good shape, it's like, I admire the shape, but I admire more they stuck with it over time. Right. But at some point they started seeing results, and it started to feel good, and it compounded on itself. Right. And so that's kind of the game of life that we're sort of playing, and it works everywhere, right? In our relationships, in our business, in our, what we do with our health, it always working all the time.
That's amazing. To wrap up, what is the one thing that you want to tell an ADHD entrepreneur who is 6 months into their business or 6 years into their business and still white knuckling it? What do you want them to actually do with what they heard today?
I want them to take away, it doesn't have to be that way, right? If we start with the understanding of your brain, understanding that it's all a game of getting across the dopamine desert, of understanding, keeping in mind where you really want to go, and then putting in the support, the understanding that supporting your brain supports your business. So whatever it is that you need or will be helpful for you to support how your ADHD brain operates in your business, that will help the business operate, and you will make amazing progress over time.
Steve, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and the type of conversation that I love having on this show, because it is so complementary to the type of work that I do. And I don't think that there could be enough support resources for people and for neurodivergent people specifically? Before I let you go, where do people find you? Where do they find the accelerator, and more of your work?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me I have two websites, steveaugustcoaching.com and ADHD-accelerator.com. And those are the best place to find me. I also, you can find me on TikTok and YouTube as well.
Amazing. And as always, we'll have all those links for y'all in the show notes. Squirrels, I want to say something to the person who recognized themselves in Steve's story or in the type of support structure that he provides. You are building something that is real and hitting milestones and moving forward, and privately drowning a little bit, running on fumes and willpower and just the sheer refusal to let anyone see how hard this actually is. And what I want you to hear, and it echoes what Steve just said, you're not white knuckling it because you're not good enough. You are white knuckling it because you're running a neurotypical operating system on a neurodivergent brain and then wondering why it keeps crashing. The chaos was never the enemy. It's often a strength. The wrong structure was the enemy. And structure, the right kind that's built for the way your brain actually works, is something that can be built in a lot of different ways. Steve is an example. I'm an example. There are lots of support systems around here. Stop delegating your tasks and start delegating executive function. You are not broken. The system is. Let's build a better one. Bye, squirrels. I'll see you next time.